All right. So our next review is a movie that Dusk also saw there. It is going to be for the film Saturday Night. This is a biographical comedy film about the very, very first episode of Saturday Night Live. People know Saturday Night Live. It's one of the longest running sketch comedy shows of all time. Next year will be its 50th year anniversary there. So yeah, I mean, it is a institution basically here. We've seen so many legendary comedians come from Saturday Night Live, even from this very first season. You have people like Chevy Chase and John Belushi, but just throughout the history of Saturday Night Live, people like Eddie Murphy, people like Will Ferrell, people like Tina Fey. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on and on of so many legendary comedians that have come from this now. Now it's a staple there of you see that. And every comedy film nowadays, like there's at least one or two SNL cast members there in almost every comedy movie you see. You got to throw in at least one or two of them. So yeah, I mean, and this is all about the chaotic, very, very first episode there of how they kind of got everything together, how they were able to do this, just what type of mess it was. Are they even, are they even able to air this? Is it going to happen? Well, yes, of course it's going to happen. The shit's been on for 50 years.
Yeah,
You don't know. I mean, obviously that, takes a little bit out of the suspense of like, yes, I mean, they're going to make it to air. It's going to be successful. It's going to be big there. Yes, I mean, obviously that's going to happen. So this is directed by Jason Reitman here. Jason Reitman, who's done a lot of great work in his life. He's done, movies like Tully. He's done Juno. He's done Up in the Air, which I love. Up in the Air. Up in the Air is one of my favorite movies there. Thank You for Smoking also is really amazing.
yeah,
So
it's fantastic.
he's done a lot of really great work. I'm gonna pass it to you, Dusk. What are your thoughts on Saturday Night?
This is a movie that's really just an ensemble cast in a specific point in time where we're able to see and diagnose and get just a feel through of not only the place and time where they are and just the different minds of these just younger generation stepping up, filling in a spot that just happened to be available because because Johnny Carson was going through a contract dispute. And so they didn't have
Fuck's
anything in
sake.
there. And so they just go, uh, "Hey, do you want to do something?" Sure. And it's this expectation of failure, this expectation of something new and crazy that you really focus on here. I think everyone does a really strong job with this movie, but that's really the feeling here. It's just there's a lot of chaos, a lot of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And they throw a lot of this wall. This feels very similar with other ensemble movies. This movie reminded me a lot of Birdman in a lot of
Mm,
ways,
okay.
where it was following a few keynote people throughout this 90-minute lead up to what would be a historical moment in television, and just seeing everything just almost working out and then falling apart, or people butting heads who are very just hard-headed, or just technical problems, or people leaving, or people walking out on the project. And with the pressure of the people who backed this, uh, his dream, Lauren Michaels' dream of making something like this, his own issues with with Rosie Schuster, his wife as well, who's both of them are trying to make this work as well. And you have people bumping heads with Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, especially John Belushi. Garrett Morris is there, and he's like, "Why am I even here?" You got Gilda Radner, you got Jane Curtin, you've got
Mm,
all these and Lorraine Newman. You just all these like kings and queens of comedy when they're super young. Nothing like this has ever been done quite yet. He even says at one point in the movie, "This is the first time that a young generation will be making a TV show that had been brought up on TV." So they grew up. This is the first generation who grew up with TV now getting a chance to make TV.
mm, yeah. And you mentioned the long list of people here. All the people that are playing the famous comedians, like we
Mhm.
know here, like Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Gilda Radner. So on the list here, so Chevy Chase is played by Corey Michael Smith. People might know him. He was in the Gotham TV show. He was the Riddler. in that.
Mm.
And he's as far as like this is a huge ensemble cast, and like you trying to focus on so many people. Him as Chevy Chase is probably the most leading person here. Him and Lauren Michaels, there's a lot of screen time with them. You have Dylan O'Brien, who people might know. He was in the Maze Runner series. He plays Dan Aykroyd in this. Um, you have John Belushi, who's Matt Wood, who I feel like we don't get really a lot of John Belushi, who was also a
No.
major figure in the first seasons of SNL there. He was one of the big also
Oh, he's one of the
breakouts.
landmarks.
Yeah,
Chevy Chase, like the original 6, they're huge landmarks. Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, as Lorraine Newman, Garrett Morris, like, jeez, I'm blanking.
Jane Curtin,
Yeah, Jane Curtin and oh my
Gilda
god.
Radner.
Yeah, Radner. They're like the original 6 or 7,
Yeah, the OGs. They're the
the
very first.
OG.
Yeah. So with him, he was played by Matt Wood. Looks a lot like John Belushi, what they do with the
It
makeup
is
and
a good
all.
job.
With it. And the other people who come in also like as Dan Aykroyd, they also do a good job at making them up, and I think doing a good job at making them look like the real figures there as well. But him, he's just kind of presented as he was just this wild man who they couldn't control, and he was on drugs the whole time. He kind of just comes in and out of the movie, both kind of literally because they're trying to prep him. And
Yeah.
you see Lauren Michaels, who in this is played by Gabriel LaBelle there, and he's trying to run around, put out all these different fires again, literally, because there's even a fire that even happens on the stage there, and he's trying to take care of all this. He's like, I gotta plan these sketches, I gotta plan the music, I gotta fix this, I gotta fix that. And then John
Mhm.
Belushi is just running around everywhere being kind of crazy John Belushi. So it's not really a whole lot of him in this,
If I
really.
had any complaints with this movie, it's that we get a moment when with John Belushi at the very end where you see like a glimpse that there's more to that guy. And I do have an issue that they do try to kind of just portray him as this just wild animal that you gotta have to corral when he's a much more complicated person.
Yeah.
And you get a glimpse of that near the end when he's talking to Lauren Michaels,
Mm.
but you never fully get that moment. Everyone else, you get like a little bit of layer of their character. The problem is we have 40 plus characters in here.
Yeah.
40 plus. There's not a lot of time. You get some surprises here and there if you don't know too much about Saturday Night Live. I was waiting for it, and I'm glad they didn't disappoint. There is a cameo by our favorite Muppet handler, Jim Henson. He
Yeah.
shows up and it's great. A lot of people don't know this. Jim Henson was part of the original Saturday Night Live crew.
Mm.
He
Yeah.
didn't last. They didn't last too long, but well, there was a lot of unfortunate resentment with Jim Henson and the writers' room, where their style of comedy just didn't fit his style of Muppet comedy,
Mhm.
and so they ended up. Jim Henson ended up parting ways with Lauren Michaels. They both agreed. It was it kind of like I wish you luck, and I don't think this is the right for you. And he wished him the best of luck and helped him actually continue his eventually what would lead to become would be the Muppet Show, which would be an amazing TV program that really hit the map with the Muppets. If he wasn't already well known in America, made him international.
Yeah. Who's this is played by Nicholas Brahm, who people might know. He was in Succession. He was like the lurch in Succession there. And then he also does double duty because he also plays Jim Henson and he's also Andy Kaufman in this as well. So he does double duty there. Does a good job at both.
Mhm.
Again, they do a good job making him look like two distinct different people there. And I didn't even notice it was him as Jim Henson there. I didn't even really kind of notice that. But yeah, that's really good. So yeah, I mean, this is a huge, like I say, it's a huge ensemble, just like much like the real Saturday Night Live is, and so many different actors in this, and
I kind of
s-
wanted like a name underneath every person so I could know who they were, like at least once.
because
Because
it
if you
was just
don't know who these people are, you're not gonna really, you know what I mean? You're not gonna. You're kind of going,
yeah,
oh, that's who you are? Oh, okay, that's who you're trying to be? They say their name maybe once or twice if you're lucky, but
yeah,
other people, it's a you don't not everybody knows who the Red Riders and the Riders Rooms in were.
yeah, that's true. So I mean, that kind of brings me into a question. So do
Mhm.
you think like this? it's kind of like, okay, if you already know the history of SNL, I don't know how much you know about the history of SNL, the beginnings of it.
Mhm.
Do you think for somebody who isn't too familiar, this is good for them, but somebody who is like very versed in the history of like SNL and the start of it and everything like that, do you think it offers much for them?
I think on its own, taken as a movie on its own, I think it does a great job. I think you have a lot of kinetic energy in this movie, a lot of great actors who were able to capture a lot of the characterizations. And the few that don't, you want more from. I want to see more of the actor who played Belushi, I believe, Matt Wood.
Mhm.
Uh, I want to see more of his style of John Belushi, but we only get so much time. I think we get glimpses of characters and moments, and that, but more. This is really more of Lauren Michaels' story and the creation of Saturday Night Live. It's like the Saturday Night Live is beyond all the people who are involved in it. It's an encompass of everybody working together in this environment, even though they're all. It's kind of like a jambalaya of all these different personalities from all over the place, from all over the United States,
Mhm.
and it's more of a. It's all leading up to this one moment, a make or break, and everyone is kind of being petty, and everyone's having their problems and issues, and there's people pushing back and pushing against censorship or calling people out for their not being funny enough or comedic enough, and Lauren Michaels struggling against the insane pressure that he's going into and his own relationship troubles that's hinted and very much put in with his wife at the time, Roshi Schuster, who
Mm.
also does a fantastic job. The actress Rachel Snow, which does a great
Yeah.
job, kind of being this second bouncing act where she kind of comes in and kind of calms down almost everybody. She knows how to talk with almost everybody. She's almost too good at her job, where she kind of flirts pretty hard with almost to calm people down. And there's clearly a unspoken tension between her and Lauren Michaels, and she just does a great job as well. Everybody's a stand-up performance. I think Corey Michael Smith does a great job as Chevy Chase, but I think really it's the subtle performance of Gabriel LaBelle as Lauren Michaels that really is the kind of the heart of the movie, and a
Mm.
person's kind of drive to kind of figure out, well, as he's asked many times in this movie, well, what is Saturday Night? What are you trying to do? And he can't quite have an answer until finally it's shoved in his face and asked, like, dead serious, what is it? Define literally what you're trying to do. And he kind of capitalizes in it. It just says it's what you expect the city to be like.
Mm.
All the chaos and everything. It's what you expect city life is from all. It might be a jazz performance on here. You're walking around. It might be a sketch. It might be people bickering between each other or a funny sketch or moment. It's what you experience on Saturday night that we can broadcast to everyone around the world.
Mm. Yeah. And not to even mention also kind of some other great people. Cooper Hoffman, who's in this, who plays Dick Ebersol there. And then of course, with this, it's like you have the young upstarts who's against the old man regime there. And it's like I don't think this can work.
Mhm.
We'll show you old people that we can do it. You know what I mean? I can do this, so we can put this on the air.
To be
And a lot
fair
of
to the old men, they're completely justified in their worries.
True. I mean, once they see fires and it's like the cast is all getting into fights and people are running off
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, yeah, I was like, I don't know about this. I mean, yeah, and a lot of it. So you have William Defoe, who represents that. You have also J.K. Simmons, who's like also like Milton, who
Milton
plays,
Berle, Uncle Milty.
yeah, who's plays a lot of the old guard there of Hollywood, of old Hollywood, who's being pushed out there, and a lot of these new young upstarts are kinda
Mhm.
coming in there. Yeah, so you kinda got that element going on. Of course, like I said, it with a movie like this, it's like that is a biographical film. It's like what happens, but how much can you make it interesting as far as even if you know where the movie's gonna go? Because obviously, yes, we know the history of SNL and where it kinda goes with that. And I think as much as yes, it's gonna happen. I think the movie does a good job at, like, you feel very kinda chaotic, right?
Yeah.
You feel like Lauren Michaels running around trying to do all these different things, trying to plan like, imagine if you were trying to plan this and focus on this and do this and, 50 million things at once here, and you also have to deal with these prima donna of actors here like Chevy Chase and John Belushi who are also there. Corey Michael Smith there, who very much of what you've heard about Chevy Chase and kind of his attitude there, very much in his early years, his ego, how much kind of that tanked his career a little bit there. That much is very present here because Chevy Chase was only on SNL for just the one season and then he left. He was that much of a breakout star and then he went on to do movies and all that stuff like that. So yeah, that very much is presented here about like he has this burgeoning career that's ready to kind of come up there. But yeah, I mean, just so many, wonderful actors in this that do really well. Also Garrett Morris, there, who's played by Lamorne Morris himself, no relation at all. It's not like his son
Mhm.
or anything like that. He does a very good job too. He comes in with a lot of good moments in this as well that are really good there.
Which
Um,
surprised me because he looks really close to young Garrett Morris.
Yeah, they do look very close alike. Yeah, I will, yeah, say that as well. And he comes in with some also really great moments there and trying to figure out like, yeah, what is my kind of place here? As far as like, I went to Juilliard, I'm
He's
this,
a published playwright,
very highly accomplished guy on this amongst, and they also do mention like he's the oldest one out of all of them there. So yeah, he's kind of already had a little bit more of an established career than most of these other people. So it's
which
like,
you don't get it from the movie, but Lorne Michaels actually saw one of his plays, saw his writing in his playwright, and he actually invited him. That's why he invited him, was he thought he was extremely talented and he wanted him to be a part of the show he was making.
yeah. What do you think is some of the weakest elements of this movie?
Uh it's such a large ensemble piece, and it's the style of movie. It's a one track follow, so it's just on one track on this one long continuous shot. You kind of almost get wrapped up in the chaos. That I think the biggest problem would be in this movie is you never quite get a full. You only get like snippets of character. You only get fully small snippets, and really, it's more of the show itself overall. When I would have liked a little bit more, I will say the pacing is good though. It is very tight. It doesn't really have a lot of fat to cut because it really just feels like you're just getting just enough to get going. Although I do feel like maybe Lauren Michaels' cousin could have probably been cut out. He's kind of like he kind of goes on a small little moment, but
Was
that
he the
really doesn't.
dude with the sweater on?
Uh,
That was that guy?
no, he's the guy that takes the puff and then he locks himself
Oh,
in a room.
that guy. Okay.
Yeah, he kind of disappears after that point. So you're kind of like, well, what was the point of his? But I think he just adds to the chaos. But yes, there are moments that you probably could have cut some fat, did some moments. The But overall, I think it's a strong film that's able to kind of balance like this huge ensemble cast, but it suffers from the fact that it's then has to be very limited in this scope, and you're not really able to really focus on these young comedic giants.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's kind of its greatest strength, it's almost its greatest weakness because, like I said,
Mhm,
you have all these really talented people in this ensemble cast who do such a very good job at, I think, portraying these real life figures
mhm,
here, and it's tough when you're also portraying real life figures who are still most of them are still alive today. A lot of the original cast there are still alive today, and you can go back and you can, a lot of people have very strong memories of John Belushi and of Chevy Chase and people watching the very first season of SNL, so you do kind of have those strong memories there and trying to kind of do your thing with those kind of characters. And you almost do wish that this was almost either longer or maybe it focused more about, would you rather have seen like them actually assembling the crew of SNL, like
mm,
rather than just the very first night they go live on SNL? Would that have been better or
I it's hard to say. I think honestly having them all together is probably the best you're gonna get. Because if you did it where you gotta assemble them one at a time, like creating like an Avengers, we gotta get the team together. We gotta get the
that's
group
like
together.
Ocean's 11. You gotta
Yeah,
get the
gotta get
yeah.
everyone together. But then after all that, you kind of assembled them to start this program, and then you're like, yeah, and that's how it happened. I think this is the best way, almost the best of both worlds. You have the chaos as if they're still trying to figure out the dynamics between each other. There's clearly history between a few of them already, but it's all coming to this very specific moment.
Mm.
Unlike the movie, like we reviewed a week or two ago, Reagan, where it felt like a pastiche of going over his entire life and not doing it very well. This is specifically one night, and it's an ensemble piece, but I got more of a vibe and a feel of what's going on and why this is important and what's going to happen if they fail. It
Mm.
felt like I didn't need Lauren Michaels' life is very interesting. He's a very accomplished man. At one point, Milton Berle talks about, "Hey, these are all the Emmys I've won. This is on Mr. Television, on blah 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 blah." And Lauren Michael goes, "You're like, oh, yeah, you are." And then you look at Lauren Michaels' career, and you're like, "Yeah, and he won 21 primetime Emmys and 106 nominated, and he holds the record as the most nominated individual in an award show's history."
Mm.
So he's also hosted plenty of other shows that have impacted generations of people, not including Saturday Night Live, but also the late night series since 1993, Kids in the Hall, and the Tonight Show since 2014. So, and he's done way more than that. So he's had a huge uh, presence in television.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Lauren Michaels is a titan of the industry, for sure there, as well.
I thought
Um,
the guy who played
George Carlin.
Drew Carlin did a great job.
Yeah, Matthew Rice, who people might know, The Americans he was on. He was also in that movie, the Mister Rogers movie with Tom Hanks. He was also in that as well.
Mhm.
People might know him for that. Yeah.
Who they
Real
mentioned in this movie too? They
Mr.
mentioned
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, yeah. So, yeah. What would you give it, Dusk?
Uh it's a very good movie. Its greatest strength is its greatest weakness, but ultimately, when it's able to cover such a large amount of comedic talent, everyone in just a short period of time, with a great sense of pacing, great acting from all involved, with a stakes that you can understand, you can appreciate, good writing, and kind of reflect a period in time that feels authentic, but also capturing the energy and raw talent that was displayed in that just burgeoning years of Saturday Night Live that made it such the institution that it is, less that it was for the time and still is to a certain extent, despite its waning time period over time. Uh, I'm gonna give this a this is gonna give this a low peak.
Low peak. Okay. I would say I don't feel as strongly
Mhm,
about the movie as you do, but I liked it. I thought it was good. Thought it was a solid film there. I thought it was humorous,
mhm.
very humorous there, and kind of the things they were done. And like I said, it does do that chaotic nature of things very well, of like the running around and the way the camera kind of is following Lauren Michaels and dealing with all these different situations and following the other actors around. Um, and, you have this big ensemble, and a lot of people, I think, at least for me, I'm not experts as far as these people go, as far as their impressions or how they are there, but I think it does a solid job in the way they look and kinda the way they perform, as figures like John Belushi or Chevy Chase or Garrett Morris and all these other figures. I think they do a pretty solid job at that, and they do work well together there and feeling that kind of big interest, energy of, like, this is people all trying to make something work, you know what I mean? All working hard to try to get this on air and get it done and get this to work and trying to put out all these fires and trying to get this done. So I think the movie does a good job at showing that that chaotic nature of how live television can be. So for me, I would give it either kind of I'll give it a plain tune in for me. I'll give it a kind of just a plain strong tune in. So yeah, so a lowish peak from dusk and a solid tune in for me for Saturday night.
That's fair enough. It's fair. I was debating between a high tune in or a low peak. I decided I went with low peak.